themselves known to the chair now. Seeing no one rushing up to tell me that they also are recording it, we'll consider that part of this done. In keeping with our agenda, as always, our first item is public participation. If there is anybody who wishes to address the Finance Committee, please go ahead and come to the microphone now. Okay. Do you wish to speak to the committee?
No, I'm just here for my political side.
Sounds great. Welcome. Okay, so public participation being promptly dispensed with, we will now move on to the Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee's reserve and stabilization policies. These have been forwarded out for everyone to review. I think everyone's had a chance to look at it. That said, it is also printed out for people to take a look at and make comments on. I do see that we have a member of the school committee and a member of the school staff here to answer any questions and to receive our feedback. This is an opportunity for us to share the point of view of the committee directly with these individuals. I would like to start by saying thank you for actually thank you for publishing this and asking for our feedback. I know that this was something that was requested by the school committee liaison, but it's great to actually see it work and come together, and so thank you for bringing it to us. I'm going to do a quick whip around the table and see if anybody would like to add anything, would like to share their thoughts on it. I did not receive any questions in advance. That's why you didn't get any in advance. But we'll start there. Was there anybody that wishes to start? Steve.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This may be a nitpick, but where you cite the state law that limits the excess and deficiency to 5% of the budget, I checked online because the copy I have of the Mass General Laws is probably out of date. But it specifically said that you were limited to 5% of the budget plus next year's capital budget. Is that correct? And if it is correct, it should be so stated. If it's not correct, then we're fine.
Possibly a nitpick, but 5% of the budget refers to the operating and capital budget. It's a distinction without a difference for Acton-Boxborough.
Well, it seemed to me it was saying that you could add to the 5% next year's capital budget. As I read the law. So, I will admit I have never read that law before.
This is for E&D, not for the stabilization.
No, for E&D.
That would be news to me, and it's not what's in the DOR's calculation of same.
Okay, so I have one book of Mass General Laws, and it was in that, but it was from 2014. Then I checked on the web, which is always accurate in terms of information.
Everything.
Yeah. And it said the same thing.
Now, that said, Steve, since they are officially declaring to maintain the E&D fund a target reserve between 4 and 4.5% of operating expenses, they are not taking that potential loophole into account unless they're suggesting that the law supersedes the policy.
Yeah, I just want to be clear on what the law says.
So if this is what you're referring to, Steve, the commissioner shall certify the encumbered amount in the excess and deficiency fund, so-called, of a regional school district, and the amount, if any, by which it exceeds 5% of the district's operating budget and its budgeted capital costs for the succeeding fiscal year. Is that?
I saw something like that, yes.
I would say that that's tortured wording in Mass General Laws, and the fact that our budgeted capital costs are part of our budget, we've captured it.
I'm okay.
Failing that, what Jason said is true.
Just try and keep you guys on your toes, you know.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to make a comment on either of these policies? Christine?
On number 7, where it says acquisition of land or construction, reconstruction, addition to, or equipping of district-owned buildings, that feels broad. And this is as far as the use of the stabilization funds, and I understand that it's constrained within the law, but the way this is stated, equipping of district-owned buildings could mean anything.
So the intention was not, I'm always like put off by these. So the intention was to keep it broad enough so that we could do things like equip our district-owned buildings. At some of, and that is a proper and appropriate use of capital, of money set aside for capital. We don't want to lock ourselves into not including something that we might need. And you do find this in many policies.
So if I understand correctly, the purpose of the stabilization fund is for items that you would otherwise have to bond. So what would fall under this sort of heading that would also get to the point where you would need to bond it rather than using the regular budget to pay for it? Can you?
So I might need your help on this. My understanding of stabilization was that it is indeed intended to avoid bonding, but the scope of that is wider. But you can correct me if I'm wrong.
So it's, in particular, you're looking at equipping of buildings?
Just that whole, I mean, construction, reconstruction, I can see how those would be something that you would need to bond and not just work into the normal budget. But the equipping of district-owned buildings sort of open to like pens and pencils. I know that's not what you mean by it, but I'm wondering what would fall under that?
So equipment would be like a boiler, like plumbing fixtures, but not a faucet, but a major overhaul. If you look at the sentence or the paragraph that precedes the numbered items, the committee may appropriate funds from the Capital Stabilization Fund only for the purpose of funding school capital projects. So in a capital project, we've gone back and forth on defining a capital project, but our financial statements say it's anything with a value of $25,000 or more. So these are not going to be nitpicky things.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any other comments? Did you want to comment on not liking that this was outside of the?
I will once again voice my objection to the idea that this use of the stabilization fund removes decisions from town members at town meeting. We no longer will have a chance to discuss what will often be the use of large amounts of fund. If this was something that you went to the town to get a bond for, the town's people would have an opportunity to speak at the meetings. And while I hope there is an opportunity similar to that at the school committee meetings, it's not the same as individual town members being able to vote.
I appreciate that it's different, regional school districts. Two things I want to tell you is, one, we are committed to transparency. So, well, I guess my first point is that anyone can come to it. We wouldn't necessarily have like a public hearing on capital, but anyone can come to a school committee and offer a concern or question to us in our public meetings. And we're structuring the transparency piece so that it's on our website. We're working with our tech department to build a spreadsheet where you can track and follow what's happening in the capital plan. I just lost my train of thought. And it is required of us to publish, to submit, I believe as part of our budget, all of the like basically a tracking of deposits into that account and what we spend money on. So I don't know if that helps. It is structured differently, but we're doing our best to make the process transparent and make the transactions transparent and to invite feedback in our regular meetings. Yeah.
So it's my responsibility to be the initial reporter, if you will, for the school district. We're not establishing a fund to accept a little grant. This is a very high visibility undertaking, and presumably when we put money in, it will not be small amounts of money. This has my attention. This is as the reporter, the financial reporter again, if you will, for the district. This is not going to be hidden. This is not going to be kept off to the side. And no, don't worry about that over there. Let's vote for this budget. This is going to, by its nature, have to have a lot of scrutiny, whether it's transactions that are authorized by the school committee that are done in public meeting with never done on the spur of the moment, but would be done with some forethought, done with ALG in mind. And having been here almost 2 years, I think that process is one that is not going to allow the school committee to get away with manipulating a fund in that kind of manner. Does it say that in the policy? Does it say everything that I just said by the letter of the? No, but I don't think that's what a policy does. A policy establishes ground rules for the body, and the law allows it to do certain things up to a threshold. The law does allow the school committee the purview, but it does allow the towns the backstop of if something was clearly egregiously wrong in the eyes of the selectmen and then the voters of those towns, there is the opportunity to change that. Two strands. One, if it's done during the normal budget process, it will have all the scrutiny befitting any of the line items in the budget. If it's done as a budget amendment, how many budget amendments does the school district propose in the course of a year? It would get a ton of scrutiny just by virtue of that. In my view, there's a lot of controls over this inherent in the process because of how many people have been involved in understanding what the plan is, the process of getting it approved by both towns, that we're intending to fund it, and that it's been transparent. It's been tremendously transparent to date. Peter has been talking for months about this, and I would expect that transparency to continue with some real numbers going forward.
I appreciate that, but it is entirely possible that future administrations will not be quite as conscientious as you and Peter Light are. So we understand that policy is not law, et cetera.
I trust the school and the school committee to be doing the right thing entirely with this. I hope that continues to be the case going forward. This, for me, comes from a point of a removal of a degree of separation away from the people who vote. We had a few half-hour conversations in here about what to do with $50,000 proposal in the CPC that then came up at town meeting. We had someone who got up and prompted a long discussion about the use of tasers, which was an $8,000 expense. People get down into these small expenses when the information goes out as part of the town warrant. People don't look closely at the school budget as much as I wish they would. And there isn't the same level of the school committee meeting agendas and things being distributed to every voter in the town, every household. So inherently taking something out of town meeting makes it much less visible to the people in the public. So anything you can do to continue to make it visible is what I'd like. I appreciate the idea greatly of the stabilization fund. My concern is entirely about removing it, not in any bad way that you're trying to, not with any malice, but removing it from the visibility of the average voter. The people I know who go to school committee meeting are parents, who unfortunately are not the sole members of the town and are not the majority of the taxpayers. So anything we can do to raise the visibility of items like this or maintain visibility, I would greatly appreciate.
Yeah, if I may just make a suggestion, that this, and I guess an accounting of what went in and what came out of the stabilization fund or the plans for it, be one of the slides that the school committee presents at town meeting, just as a matter of transparency, so that everybody in town knows what happened.
If I could follow on to that, we were speaking about this just beforehand. People who go to this capital improvement plan meetings know that I've been saying this for years. I would love to see a backward look at this as well. So by all means, I love the fact that in the opening paragraph you are tying this to the SIP. That's great. But there's no back-end accountability. So the very last line of this is on an annual basis, the district shall report publicly on the funds maintained in the capital station fund and the intended use of these funds. I would love to see that at the exact same time that you are reporting that you are reporting the next iteration of the SIP, which is something that's going to, it's not, you're not going to write a 20-year SIP plan and then not touch it. You're going to touch it every year. So I'd like to see the SIP be reported at the exact same time. And I would also love to see, and I'm not going to make it be in the policy, but as Steve just mentioned, having this be something that is institutional during the town meeting presentation. I would love to see, 3 years ago, we told you we were going to do A, B, C, and D. 3 years forward, we did A, B, and D. The reason why we didn't do C was because the timing didn't work or the funding didn't come through, or we decided we could push it off another year. There are not so many items on the SIP, and I'm on that committee, so I see it. And, you know, in some years you've got 10 or 12 things on there. I would love to see a recent backward-looking accounting of what you said you were going to do and what you did, so that we can true up what went into the stabilization fund and what it got used for. I think you will find that you will have a lot greater reception, both on this committee and in the town, if you say, we're going to do A, B, C, and D, and you come in, say you're off by a couple of percent, and no one's going to yell at you. If you say you're going to do A, B, C, and D, and instead you do X, Y, and Z, then the lack of control that Christie had brought up will rear its ugly head and will engender not the level of support that you're looking for. So while I'm not going to demand that a backward-looking thing be part of the policy, although I did toy with it, I do think that I would like you to add that the SIP iteration also be part of what is officially reported every year. I know it already is, but I'd love to see it be tied to this too. And then I would very much like it to become, as Steve pointed out, a slide or two during town meeting, or certainly during Budget Saturday. If you don't want to do it during town meeting, just know that I'm going to ask you that question every year for School Budget Saturday. What went in? What went out? Why did you deviate from the SIP plan or not? I don't need 10 years, but I do need 3 or 4. Is that a reasonable request? Thank you.
You want a motion of that, or?
Nope. Nope, I'm not going to make them, I'm not going to do that on this. We're not looking for a vote on this. The other thing that I would like to, so that is the capitalization, my comments on the capitalization stabilization fund policy. I'd like to make just one, I'd just like to make one question on the reserve policy. You say you were targeting between 4 and 4.5. What are the consequences if you're not there? Yeah, just asking a question. Okay. Is it the assumption that if you find yourself at 4.6, 4.7, that the following year you're definitely going to try and reduce the assessment?
So that is not in the policy, and I'm not going to make a commitment to that right now.
Okay?
Great. But I appreciate the question.
Okay. Are there any other comments or feedback or questions that people would like to make on either of these policies?
I just wanted to say thank you for working so hard on this so quickly and getting it for us. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I did start with that. There you go.
I just wanted to say we really appreciate your feedback. This has already been looked at by Budget Sub, the Capital Committee, Boxborough, FinCom, Acton FinCom now. It'll go back to Budget Subcommittee and Policy before the school committee sees it. So we appreciate your feedback very much.
Thank you. If I may put Selectman Benson on the spot, you guys are called out as having to react within 45 days if there's a budget amendment. How do you feel about all that? Are you comfortable with this policy as well? Has it been reviewed by the BOS? And of course, you don't have to respond if you don't wish to.
No, we have not taken a look at it yet.
How do you feel about, how do you feel personally about a 45-day window? Plenty of time?
That's fine.
Great.
Great.
What's that?
The 45-day window isn't something you guys came up with, it's the law, right? It's part of the law behind it. Okay.
Fair enough. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Dave. You're welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting. Thank you for that. Okay. So we did want to make sure to go through that tonight because I know that was something from a timing perspective for the school committee. And I know that Boxborough Finance Committee took it up last night. So that's part of the reason we're having such a short meeting tonight anyway. I did want to move on to the next item, which is annual town meeting review. This is a normal thing that we do after annual town meeting. We have a postmortem of how we felt the meeting went, what lessons we may have learned, what things we would like to see more of, more or less a free-form conversation. I'll start on that side.
Well, since at least Al's new and hasn't heard me say this before, and the rest of you have, I'll make my annual comment. The warrant comes too late in the game, in many cases, for us to do an effective job on every article. I've been on the committee a long time. It never used to come as late as it has come in the last few years. There used to be draft warrants available in January. Didn't have all the numbers in it, didn't have all the language nailed down, but they were there. You could start working on it. And it seems we get later and later and later every year, and I just don't understand why that is. By the time Budget Saturday is over, we pretty much know what's in the budget. During the course of late January and February, there may be some adjustments made at ALG meetings, but somewhat on the margin. They're not affecting $35 million. They're, it's maybe $500,000 that gets impacted. I just don't see why the bulk of the warrants, certainly the ones that deal with money, cannot be ready by the end of January. Now, I realize there's a bunch of other things that go into the warrant that may take some time. Certainly, citizens' petitions can take a lot of time, but those usually aren't something that we spend a great deal of time studying or deliberating. But the articles that have to do with money and the simple ones like, enterprise funds and revolving funds are sometimes the last things we see, and they're pretty much known by the first weekend in January.
So there has been some conversation not from the town, but from people in the town, about potentially moving our town meeting to May, similar to Boxborough. Would that actually make a difference? Would that make it easier for the town to pull together these things, or is the deadline just going to get moved anyway, and they're still going to run up late against it anyway? Brian, would you care to weigh in on that, since you are the representative of the town? You're going to shake your head? Okay, fair enough.
The only comment I'd make is if you use some of the special town meetings that come up from time to time, we usually face exactly the same problem at a special town meeting. I don't think it's the date. It's administratively and logistically, I don't know that I understand why it takes so long to get a draft warrant together.
Is the responsibility for this laid at the feet of the town manager or at the Board of Selectmen?
My opinion, both.
Okay.
To piggyback on that, what Steve's saying is a lot of the stuff is like boilerplate. It's the same language year to year to year on the revolving funds and on the actual town budget and stuff like that. So you already know what the language is going to be. You just plug in the new numbers, and there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to have that by mid to late January. Better mid than late, but we should have all that information.
Yeah.
Then we can start
When did ALG sign off this year? It was early February, right?
early February. So, I mean, okay, so early February, but,
Right. That's when the numbers were more or less solid, right?
right. So, I mean, so it should have been ready to go pretty much right after ALG, and we agreed to it at that point.
Fair enough. I'll just go in order. I'll go in order.
I believe town meeting date is effectively set by the town bylaws, which are kind of hard to change. I have concerns that if we do move the date out, that the draft will just come later. So I'd rather see this fixed internally to the town and just figure out who needs to get the information to whom, by when.
Fair enough.
I guess my question is, are we, when we're getting those numbers, I mean, I get the language, we should be able to get that if it's going to be boilerplate from prior years, but are we waiting for precision as opposed to accuracy? Because decisions can be made without down to the nickel, down to the dollar. Recommendations can be made. Because you know, this is my first year, but what I saw was blank areas for numbers. And are we talking about 300,000? Are we talking about we're waiting to figure out if it's 301,526? Because if we're really waiting for just accuracy, then that should just be, that should be easy. So, you know, I would recommend pushing just to get something and, you know, refine the figures later.
Let me try and answer that one, Mr. Chairman, if I may. We have a long-standing tradition of not voting a recommendation on an article that has a blank in it. So we need a number. To the point of precision, we don't need the exact number because the warrant is not the official number. It's the motion that's read on the town meeting floor. So if it's off by a bit, it can be corrected when the motion's read. You know, if it's substantially different, then yeah, maybe we have to reconsider the recommendation. But usually the numbers don't vary that much. So
Are those numbers, though, are they waiting to get down to precise numbers before they release them to us, though? I guess that's really my question.
I can't answer
Because
that.
if that's the hang-up.
But we ought to work Jason in the conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't stand on ceremony. I'm waiting for Brian to realize he needs to jump in and answer the question. He's busy taking notes, as we asked him to do. Well, I guess that does sort of raise a philosophical question, right? When we make a recommendation, are we bound to that final number, or should we, as a matter of policy, say, you know, when we're making the motion, that it's as long as it's in line with the numbers that we're currently seeing? Do we need to be that precise, or that wiggle room? Go ahead, Ms. Russell.
I feel like that's presumed. that if we take a vote on numbers and they are off by an obvious considerable amount, that we could reconsider on the spot. If even if we're sitting in town meeting and they present a number that's far enough off, I think that it should be presumed that we would need to revote or reconsider.
Yeah, I think your question is answered by when we get these articles. The precision involved that Al was talking about, I think is a direct correlation to the amount of information we get as well as when we get it. If we have, one meeting to decide, that really doesn't give you a lot of time to be analytical, crunch numbers, and investigate alternatives and so on. So you sort of trust what you see in the article and the number that probably approximates what's, the amount of money that they need, and, that's what you base your decision on. That is philosophically or theoretically the right thing to do, the right number, and so on. But the way the whole warrant is structured and the timing is, really doesn't give you time to analyze in detail, with your adding machine and your Hewlett-Packard pocket calculator, and investigate, what the law says, or just, as I said earlier, you just have to go at face value. This is what the warrant reads. This is the number. If it sounds reasonable, let's go with it. There is not really a lot of argument to be made to, adjust it up or down 10% or whatever. You just have to trust what your reading is correct.
I'm not willing to sign off on 10% of the school budget.
Mr. Chairman, there was a time when we used to get, probably it came out the Friday before town meeting, a copy of all the motions as they would be read. And any of us that had the energy at that point to go through and compare them to the warrant and the numbers that we had voted on could do so. And in that hour meeting we had before the first night of town meeting, we could reconsider if necessary. I don't ever recall having to do that.
Is that something that we should institute? Is that something that, I know Christie's been assiduously keeping track of things that we should be doing as a committee. Is that something that either the clerk gets dumped with it or, most junior voting member gets dumped with it as a matter of policy every year to do that in advance of our 1 hour pre-town meeting?
I think, again, I've never known it to be a problem, but as just an extra step in terms of, making sure that the number we voted is the number that will be read.
Is the committee okay with that being something we potentially end up having as a informal policy, knowing that, you have a 1 in 9 chance of getting dumped with that job every year? Okay, I see nodding heads. Great. I saw hands go up. Dave, I don't think you've had a chance to speak to. I'm going to go to you.
Yeah, my recollection doesn't go back too far, but it seems like our engagement with a lot of the warrant advocates has improved over the last few years, and maybe that's mistaken, but, one way to mitigate, one way to mitigate this sort of concerns is just earlier engagement or more often engagement is, I think there were a couple articles this year that the supporting member of town or the advocate for it wasn't necessarily available, but generally speaking, I think that's gotten a lot better, and those folks that are talking about what they like or dislike in the articles can then say, these numbers look like I have a high confidence in them, or they're relatively weak and squishy and they're probably going to go up or whatever. But I think that has improved over the last couple of years. It's just my recollection of it. And there were a couple this year that the numbers weren't really fully baked in it. And finding out in the 11th hour they were, of course, higher than you had expected wasn't really the way you wanted to go about that. But I think one way to mitigate that would be earlier and often engagement with the warrant article supporters.
Yeah, I think in line with what Dave is saying. Also, if we know any group that's going to have a warrant article of any significance for town meeting, that we should probably have them, or they should take the initiative to schedule a presentation before the Finance Committee, way prior to the town meeting. Because there were some groups, for example, the Historical Commission, and they had some controversial things that may or may not have had significant financial impact, but still has a policy impact on the town. And there are a number of, with the planning board, the CPC, we should probably have scheduled a meeting, a presentation from all those groups way prior to town meeting. So it's the last 1 or 2 meetings prior to town meeting, we have to scramble and we have to track down these people and find out more about their articles and, the pluses, minuses, the financial impact. Should be really the other way around.
I agree with you in an ideal world, but I think you might be being a little overly optimistic on that one. I think we're going to have to be the ones that say, first meeting in February, we expect to see, so-and-so, and second meeting in February, we expect to see the other so-and-so. Steve?
Well, maybe this year was the perfect storm of the town meeting can't get any earlier than April 1st. And I think CPC was maybe a little late getting to their final recommendations. But I'd never seen us make recommendations on CPC articles without presentation from the CPC before. And it really came down to the fact that we had exactly one scheduled meeting to deliberate however many it was, 50 articles.
For the record, I did add an extra meeting.
You added a meeting.
I added an extra meeting.
But normally we would have 3, maybe 4 shots at deliberating.
When it was all said and done, we did have 3 full meetings of going through articles.
Well, but we also only had 2 that we could get a recommendation into the warrant.
Correct.
Which, for the Christians out here, we just celebrated Easter. Easter always comes 40 days after Ash Wednesday. We know when our town meeting's going to be. We ought to be able to back schedule the warrant being available so that.
I think the most egregious ones were the citizens petitions. Those are not going to change by the Board of Selectmen. That's what the citizens put forward. There should have been a draft of that instantly. And that's considering that I was the one who had to go track down 11 of them. I was not happy with that personally, but that's somebody else's problem next year.
With regard to the citizens' petitions, I know it's probably the way the bylaws are written, but there is still some concern with the very low threshold of what it takes to get for a citizen to put a petition on, 10 signatures, which could be 5 couples on their street, to get the warrant article, and it's usually not fleshed out. It's lacking in detail, and, they just, they're using them as placeholders for larger discussion, but, the idea behind them, it sort of makes sense, but I think in all practicality, they're really a nuisance with regard to the way they're presented. As I said, the low threshold, and then the number of petitions that can be submitted at the last minute. They should be held to the same, at least scheduling criteria as everyone else, so that we know in advance, what's in those warrant articles, the citizens' petitions, the financial impact, what they're trying to accomplish. So they should be able to make a presentation prior to town meeting to the Finance Committee so that we can have at least half a chance to have a rational discussion about, what they're trying to accomplish.
So I'm actually of 2 minds on that. I think that I kind of like that it's a relatively low threshold. I like the idea of people being able to bring their opinions forward. That said, I do think that a lot of the topics that were brought up by citizens petition would have stood a better chance of moving forward had they worked within the committees that had responsibility for those different areas, rather than just trying to bring it to town meeting, which I think is too blunt an instrument for trying to make that kind of policy change. I think my advice to citizens who want to bring citizens petitions is make sure that you know the policy, know the right committee to start with. That gives you the best chance of getting the institutions behind you so that you can effectuate change. I was surprised at the number of citizens petitioners who had never been to a town meeting before. That, I will admit, that did surprise me. As for the comment about they didn't have a chance to get in front of us, I think this last year they did. I think the closing, and this is a question I do not know the answer to, hopefully somebody else does. Citizens cannot add a petition after the warrant closes, correct? And the warrant closed with about a month before the meeting.
It was January 31st.
Okay. So 2 months. Okay. Further statement that the citizens petition should have been in draft form in the draft warrant immediately. I do believe that since I did reach out to the petitioners relatively early, they definitely had the opportunity to come and speak in front of us. In fact, if you notice, we went through all of the citizens petitions articles before CPC ever came in front of our committee. And that speaks to the fact that that part actually had its acts together, even though I voted against every single one of them. But that's neither here nor there. Roland.
I also just thought that the presentation at town meeting by those articles was not very professional. You know, and I think that also ends up turning off voters as well, even if they maybe had a cogent argument. When you have stick figures on a PowerPoint at town meeting, it's immaturish. And, you know, but I'll let that go.
Public does what the public does. I'm not against that.
I think that we can put up a basic calendar of when we can, starting from mid-January, when we can review various warrant articles and get a format put together. I volunteer to take that on so we can have a framework for next year of getting as many things as we can and being proactive to groups like CPC and the citizens and saying, here is when we want you to come talk to us. So ideally have your information done by them, which I suspect CPC will be more encouraged to next year after what happened this year.
I would hope so.
Sounds great. Al.
One of the things that I noticed at the meeting, especially in the very beginning, was there seemed to be a lot of voicing from the citizens about the open meeting law complaints. And it also seemed to me that there might have been a misconception by some that this is something that the town is imposing as opposed to a state law. And one of the questions I had was, is anything being done? I know that Jamie Eldridge was in the audience. I know he was there hearing all of it. Has anyone followed up with him to see what might be done to hinder some of this going forward?
Before you speak, Mr. Benson, so not only was the state senator in the attendance, but so was at least one of the state reps. So I thought that was good that they both heard that. I thought it was made very clear by Selectwoman Green that that this was indeed a state problem. I know that at least one member of the committee, not myself, has already spoken to Senator Eldridge about making sure that this is a problem. Whether or not those fell on the most receptive ears, I can't really say. I know that I believe that the town manager is tracking other state representatives and state senators who have had similar issues in their towns and are potentially looking into it. With that, I will turn the floor over to Mr. Benson, who might have more recent information, but I do want to just make sure that this conversation stays at the topic of what can we do as a town and not overstep our bounds, since none of us are in the state legislature.
Yes, we were, very appreciative when the question came up and the supportive response that the town meeting gave to us, because it's been a real drain on the spirits of those, members of the community who staff our 50 or so, committees. It's on the top of John Mangiaratti's list, and he is planning meetings with other towns with a group of state reps and state senators to try to bring about remedial legislation. In part to, right now in the statute, there's no mechanism that gives the Attorney General's office a deterrent against serial filers. You can file, if you file 5 complaints, then you've got to get our permission to go beyond that, because many of them are just these, technical violations, as you people have seen with the agendas or the minutes. You put the time the meeting started, but you didn't put the time the meeting was called for, and stuff like that. But we're certainly, getting on it. It's a high priority, because it's taking a real toll. It's costing a lot of money, and it's really draining, the patience of a lot of very good people.
I have spoken to Representative Gouvier about the issue, and she was there sitting next to Senator Eldridge.
Yep. Would anybody like to speak to any of the petitions that were brought up? So, given that 11 of them were brought up and dispatched with, and definitely given what has already been said tonight, that this was perhaps not the best setup for success in the way that they went about doing it, were there any topics that were brought up that we as a committee should give more attention to?
I think we should, I think Christine did a great job presenting our point of view on the bag, being the bag. Yes. And it was very well put together and had a lot of facts. Even though that didn't go our way, it went the way of the citizens petition, that's going to happen, but at least we our point of view and had it very well represented with factual information, and not just, it's going to cost more, but actually explaining it better. And I thought that was very well done. So I want to thank you for that.
And just to pile on, I definitely thank you. I liked that we received a couple responses going, yeah, this made us think. They're in agreement with us that it would be better if there was a nickel or a dime charge for everything. Go ahead.
And just for the record, Tewksbury is considering 3 weeks after implementing their bag ban, a repeal of their plastic bag ban.
I just want to add to that. There were a few comments and discussions on social media too, and people were actually, praising Christine with the way she presented, and it was good to hear that, read that.
I believe the committee to purchase, or the group who want the town to purchase Kmart, are continuing to go forward, so expect to hear from them again.
And again, I think we said it during our deliberations in here. I think their heart's in the right place, but I think we'd all like to see a fully baked plan rather than just an open-ended desire. So I encourage them to do the legwork of getting in front of the different committees and then making sure that they have a fully baked plan, start to finish, that they can bring as an entire entity rather than just a desire.
And they might want to explain us how they're going to replace the lost tax revenue.
Their work is cut out for them. I grant that, but.
I would also say that a couple of the petitions having to do with, I guess I'd have to call it limited growth or protecting watershed, things like that, are again well-intentioned, and we probably ought to be doing more of that. They're not simple problems, and they're certainly not the kind of problem that town meeting can solve based on an up and down vote on a non-binding petition. So, there's some issues in there that we probably ought to work with other committees, including the Board of Selectmen, on trying to figure out what is the impact of some of these things on the town? How much growth can we absorb with our current water supply? Things like that. But and I know there has been discussions on that issue. We may not be moving as fast as some of the petitioners would like, but as you say, that the weapon of the citizens petition at town meeting is not the way to solve complex problems.
I didn't call it a weapon, I called it a blunt instrument. To that end, I know you just said you want to speak, right? Good.
Well, I just wanted to follow up and say, could we add to our upcoming agendas, maybe having a report from the water district on the state of the town's water resources? So we can have a better understanding of that going forward? Absolutely.
And to that end, I would also like to say that one of the things that I did mention in our message to the town was, one of the things that I mentioned in the Finance Committee response to the Kmart purchase of the Kmart parcel. I would like the Board of Selectmen to prioritize how to get to 10% 40B so that we do not have to worry about a large parcel such as that one no longer being under our control from our zoning laws. Absolutely. And then I suspect somebody wants to respond.
So I briefly attended the Piper Road building meeting, and it's my understanding, based on what they were discussing, that the paperwork has already been submitted on that front. Is that accurate, Mr. Benson, that the paperwork to hit Safe Harbor has already been submitted?
And if it should be allowed, and it'll be retroactive to April 9th. If I may comment on Kmart parcel and 10%. At our April 8th, the first meeting of the new select board, I raised the subject of how can we pick up on Article 38 and move it perhaps in another direction. So I got the select board to support a motion for John Mangiarotti and I to reach out to Stop and Shop and explore how we might jointly develop the Kmart parcel. And we have a meeting scheduled Thursday, May 2nd, with one of their real estate people. The purpose of the meeting is for us to show them what the infrastructure looks like, and we intend to start that, open the door and say, would you be willing to talk with us and work with us on how we might jointly develop the parcel. Getting to 10%, here's an update on Powder Mill. This is the project on Powder Mill Road. That was a joint project with Maynard. Joel Kahn, who's the developer, will be submitting a revised LIP. That's a friendly 40B proposal within 2 weeks. Maynard is apparently out of the project, so it's just going to be all Acton. What had been scheduled for 180 units is going to be increased. I can't give you the hard number, but probably somewhere around 40 5 units. The specifics of this are being worked out.
I'm sorry, did you say increased by 45?
Yeah, increased.
So 225?
Yeah, don't hold me to that, but that's the tentative number. The specifics are being worked out. So if that comes to pass, that 225 plus the Avalon would bring us up to about 893 units, where 10% was 848. So that would meet the 10% number based on the 2010 census. But it would give us additional units for the reset based on the 2020 census. Those results should be out by April of 21, and could be that very early into that decade, we would have hit our number for the 2020 census, because we will have in the pipeline by then 446 Mass Avenue with 31 units and 364 Main Street with 31 units, which would bring us over the anticipated 10% number, which would be about 931 affordable units. The denominator being 9,310 units. But just don't hold me to that. But I found this very, very encouraging.
Yeah, and if I may interrupt, that is very different than what was presented to me in March when I did this conversation with Selby. So what happened between March and...
That's easy. Powder Mill was dead at the time. It was just, totally stalled out. So you're talking about perhaps up to 225 units versus 0 units.
That's not, so yes, the 225 is news to me.
It had been 180 before, but we were waiting on Maynard to do the work on their end of the project.
Well, and it was 180 split between Acton and Maynard.
No, 180 was the Acton share of the units.
Okay. So I would like to say that in the next 6 weeks, I would like a formal, and please tell me who the right person is, if Selby is the right person to do this, or is it somebody from, I would like to have a...
I believe there's an ACHC meeting next Wednesday night, May 1st, where Joel Kahn is going to present, but I'll have to confirm that. We have I know Nancy Tavernier's out of town now. There is a meeting scheduled. Kahn's due to present. John Mangiaratti's note to us the other day said the specific of Kahn's proposal will be ready in 2 weeks. Maybe it's going to be ready sooner.
So with the Piper statement having just been signed, and you said it was proactive to April something, are we in safe harbor at this time?
It has to be approved by the state.
Do we anticipate any problems or any hiccups in entering safe harbor with this process?
Should not be. What puts us into the safe harbor are the 86 Avalon 2 units.
And when do we anticipate that? When do we anticipate getting official notice that we're in safe harbor?
I would say sometime by June, if not before.
And safe harbor is a 2-year period?
It would be 2 years because it's as many as 80. It's 86, so that's 10% of our target of 848. So that gives us 2 years.
So the 2010 census target was 848, and we anticipate the 2020 census target to be 931. Is that correct?
I would think, yeah. If we get, yes, it's projected at 920. Yeah, it should be around 931. Yeah.
Okay. Is it your expectation, and again, you do not have to answer this right now, but it sounds to me like we are cautiously optimistic that we will be in safe harbor by June. Mm-hmm. By the time we exit safe harbor, we will already be well on a path to the 2020 census number, potentially as early as 2021, and therefore be safe for the next decade against Kmart being turned into a 40B against our desires. Is that accurate?
That's a good statement, yeah, that's fair. If it all plays out.
So this is not what was presented to me in March. I want to be very clear about that.
Okay, what the big change was when you spoke to Selby in March, the powder mill project was dead in the water. Maynard was not moving forward, it stalled us, and the developers decided, I'll just go ahead without Maynard, and I'll build some additional units, basically, I think, going up an additional floor. Now, you got to wait on the details on this, but I think that the information I've given you is good.
That is very exciting news.
It's very good because it
is different from what you and I argued about after town meeting that night.
Well, you told me to get on it, so I got on it.
And I want to
deliver. With John Mangiarotti, he doesn't let grass grow under his feet.
What a difference 3 weeks makes. Yes, Mr. Gordon.
So, the reason Maynard pulled out is because they just built a big development up at the old deck buildings up on 27?
I don't know the details of
Because I went by the other day and saw all these just giant buildings, and 4 floors and massive, and I went, where the heck did that go in? So I imagine that might have had something that might have swayed them on that they maybe didn't need it now with that going in.
Well, the other really good piece of this, as Jason pointed out, is that if it all plays out correctly, it would, foreclose a Kmart developer from saying, I'll put a 40B in here.
Which I believe was received the most sympathetic ear from the people who were willing to support the purchase of the Kmart petition.
So we're moving on the 40B front, and John and I will be reaching out to stop.
So which of the members of the Finance Committee did you invite to that Thursday, May 2nd Kmart development meeting?
None. It's the purpose of the meeting, why it was called, was for Kristen and John to show one of the stop and shop real estate people, here's the infrastructure plan. And at that time, we're going to raise, can we talk about how we might redevelop the parcel, on a joint basis?
For 100% commercial.
We'll call it coal land. I don't know. I know it's whenever you do something like this, it's got to work for the other side too. So,
we have our zoning laws in place.
We have our zoning laws in place, and if we hit our 10% for the next decade, we remove the 40B option. Keep in mind it's got to work for them too. They could put another box store in there.
I understand.
And, I don't think people are going to be happy with that. So it's...
Understood. Sorry, I've...
You've digressed.
I have held up debate too long.
Just point of information for Roland, I drive by that site every Tuesday a couple of times, and on the little stone walls, it says something about luxury apartments. So, and some sort of retirement home, so I don't think
that's not going to qualify as 40Bs. No, not if it's declaring luxury.
So just keep it in mind, this is a work in progress, it's awaiting developments, but we are all very encouraged by this. And
this is definitely not the news I was expecting. This is great news. So, good. Let's not get carried away. I'm not that optimistic. The school committee still wants me to do cartwheels. It's not going to happen. Okay. Are there any other conversations about articles that were brought up during town meeting? Mr. Wellinghoff.
Yeah, I just have maybe more of a conversation starter or ender. Just in general, I was wondering what our criteria are to revote articles. We've done that a number of times where we've had a quorum and voted on an issue and then reopened the voting. And it's probably completely in line with the rules, but I was just wondering how the committee thinks about when, under what criteria would they reopen voting for a warrant article?
So for the reopenings that we did this last year, there were two that I remember off the top of my head. One was about pot, and that was specifically that we had a very fluid set of people present for the different meetings. I think we took three separate meetings of votes where only 5 people were in common for all the meetings. So there were just too many permutations of people who were absent. So that's why that kept getting revoted. The second one was the Walker property, right? Yes, the Walker property. And that was more or less at my discretion. There were 2 people that were not present, 2 voting members that were not present the night that we took that vote. And the split was 4-3. So I did reach out to both of the members that were not present individually and said, if your opinion would have changed the vote of the committee, I wanted the full voting power of the committee to be able to have their voice heard. I didn't want something to be, and as I said at the time when I believe it was Mr. Burghardt who was unhappy that I had reopened it, even though for the record, I voted against it every single time. I did want to set the precedent, obviously not binding. I did want to set the precedent that just because you miss a meeting, if it's a razor thin vote, I would like the opportunity for the majority, the true majority opinion of the committee to carry through, even though in this case, it was not the outcome that I wanted.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I guess my issue is just in general, in both cases, we had a quorum, and yeah, the votes were close, but in both cases, in my mind, there wasn't material new information that was presented, just a difference of voters who were attending.
The second time it's true. Second time there was not materially new information. The first time I do believe that we had gone back and gotten enough information that it warranted reconsideration. And again, I lost that one too.
Yeah, and I'm not making a motion to change anything. It's just going forward, if there's going to be contentious votes, it might be good to solicit opinions beforehand, just to have all vested parties there when there's a quorum.
Let's just be very careful about open meeting law violations on soliciting people's opinions in advance of public meetings. That can't be done.
No, fair enough, but my issue is just that when articles are voted on and reopening the voting, when there's just different people in attendance, tends to not read well either.
I hear you. For the Kennedy property one, the difference is that all 9 members were present for the final vote. So there is
I
no...
was not.
You were. You came in time.
No, in fact, it says I was missing on the minutes.
Okay.
I was not there.
Okay. Then I take it back. I thought that I was getting all 9 members' opinions.
Now, in your defense, the motion would have passed regardless of my vote. But that's just one case where, and as you pointed out, maybe the only case.
Okay.
Maybe there's nothing to discuss. It was just a point of contention with me about the voting in general.
By all means, bring it up. Any other comments on town meeting? Very good. We will move on to open meeting law complaints, if applicable. I am happy to report that is not applicable this meeting. We have no outstanding open meeting law complaints that we need to take up. We do have 3 sets of meeting minutes. One was mailed out plenty in advance of tonight's meeting, and so everyone should have had a chance to review it. I did not print it out for you since you had plenty of days to review it. Have you received any adjustments, comments, anything?
I was told they were good.
Okay. Since that one,
There was, I just noticed,
wait, right now we are only discussing the March 12th minutes that were mailed out plenty in advance.
Yeah.
So before we move on to the others, we're just going to talk about the March 12th minutes that were emailed by Christine, I believe, more than a week ago.
incorrectly.
Were there any adjustments to the March 12th minutes?
Do it offline.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the minutes of March 12th.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes of March 12th, please say aye. Aye. Great. Now, we have, the next set of minutes we have is 3/26. I only just received them, I believe it was either today or yesterday. I did not have a chance to forward them out to the committee. I have printed them out for everyone to review now. Being that we have having a very short meeting tonight, though this is not my favorite way of doing things, I would like everyone to take a couple of minutes of quiet reading time. Let's go through this, and then we will go back and make our suggestions to Brian for the changes. So just take a couple of minutes and read through it. Okay. I would like to make one recommendation, Brian. Everywhere that you call out a number that should have the dollar symbol, please go back and add them in. Property for $1.1 million, the debt payment estimated at $80,000. Make sure that you put in the dollar symbol for all of those. Make sense? Town has reached an agreement with the owner to purchase the property for $1.1 million. I'd like it to say $1.1 million. Everywhere that you call out a number that should be denominated in dollars, please adjust that. Yes, there's at least 4 instances of that.
Are we looking at both sets, or did?
No.
Oh, sorry. Oh, wait.
Mr. Chairman, under B, the warrant article discussion, Article 13, third paragraph down where it starts with concerns, it says the committee had wanted to see a small hotel or restaurant there. I think Mike was referencing the Main Street Committee, not this committee. I don't think we ever took an opinion on what we wanted to see there.
That is true. Also, on the Article 14, the I did go back and look at this again on ActonTV. The motion did not pass unanimously. I dissented. I just didn't make it clear. Oh, because what I did is I said all those in favor say aye, all those in favor say nay. I should have said nay twice, but I did dissent. So Jeff Burgart moved to recommend this article. The motion was seconded. The motion passed 8-1, or whatever it was. Would have to have been 7-1, 6-1. Any other adjustments?
For item E, we're into Article 5, you say that John presented some new information given in the slides, I believe. It just isn't clear to me from reading the documents and exhibits what that is, if that is in that list or not.
It doesn't say what John either.
I don't
Where
know,
are you?
maybe that's the. Item E, we're into Article 5, Town Capital Kelly's Corner. John had previously given the committee a slide on this topic. He provided a new slide and detailed the financial breakdown of the additional funding being requested in the article. Then on the last page, it says documents and exhibit used during this meeting. I'm guessing that's the why additional funds 2 slides, but
Yes.
there is no connection between, I don't know if it needs to be made clear. Not having attended the meeting, I don't know which that refers to.
Brian, are you okay with making that change, making that a little clearer?
You guys could, somebody just a quick bullet on it, and then it'll be really clear.
Mr. Chairman, do you want a motion to approve as amended?
Just a second. Were there other comments?
Yeah, it might just be semantics, but are we signing off Finance Department? Or should it be Finance Committee?
Where?
Just in the sign-off respectfully submitted Finance Department.
No, good point. Finance Committee.
I'm the finance department. If you want to finance committee, that's fine.
We are the ones technically doing the submittal.
So change that to finance
Committee.
committee.
You can say on behalf of if you.
So I need to send you or something about section E. Okay. Any other comments on the minutes from March 26th? Now, Steve.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the minutes of March 26 as amended.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And any abstentions? People that were not present do not wish to abstain? Very good. Take 2 minutes for the minutes of April 1st. They're nice and short. Again, change it to Finance Committee. Roland?
April 1st doesn't need an R after the 1. Mike, I also have a question on, where it says, Jason, we need to make a recommendation on the amendment on Article 4, Town Operating Budget.
Yes.
So-
That was the amendment to pull the tasers out.
Wasn't there a longer title for it? Because it looks like we voted not to recommend the town operating budget, and it looks like we voted not to recommend the sewer enterprise fund below. So could we have the full title of the warrant article for clarity?
The amendment to the warrant.
I think that we didn't vote not to recommend the town operating budget, and if you look at this, it looks like Article 4 was the town operating budget.
All right, so I'll change it not to recommend the amendment.
Yes.
motion not to recommend the amendment was
Okay,
made
that'll be-
and seconded. You can, because that's what the topic was. So yeah, change the word to a motion not to recommend the taser amendment was made and seconded. Motion carries. And then a motion not to recommend the amendment. The feasibility study amendment was made and seconded, correct? Do you have that? Does that make sense?
That's on Articles 1. Yeah.
Article 4 is the first one, and then 21 is the second one. So for 4, a motion not to recommend the taser amendment was made and seconded. And then on 21, a motion not to recommend the feasibility study amendment was made and seconded. Any other adjustments?
Under the open meeting law complaint, the numbers, under 2, it should say failing to give an accurate summary, not and. You have the word and before accurate rather than an. Bullet number 2, second page.
Oh, okay. I put the R in.
What was that?
I put the R in.
It's inappropriate.
I know it's wrong, but I like it.
Just the ST. Something.
Okay, any other comments?
And I could have been mishearing the kind of order of operations, but did we actually adjourn at 6:53?
No.
We did not.
We did not. We adjourned at the end of the first night's town meeting.
Right.
Yes. God knows what time that was.
Okay.
I believe it was around 11:15 at night.
I might have it written down, I think I did.
If you have it, please forward it to him. Actually, he's going to forward to you to make sure that these are solid, and you're going to be the one to submit them to the town clerk. Brian, when you've made your changes, forward them to Christie, who will be the one to submit it to.
For the exhibits referenced at the end of the document, for the 2 amendment to articles, I need to upload all of these files. So if it's something that we previously didn't change to the Article 13, I think we should remove it from the list, unless Jason thinks otherwise.
It's the same, no, it's not a specific, good question. We didn't actually pull out the warrant and discuss it and look at it. We absolutely discussed the article, but we did not pull out the warrant. Is it safer to just leave it in so we don't have to worry about it?
Then it should be left in. What I will do is I will upload the copy of the warrant. I prefer not to pull out that individual article and make it its own file.
That's
So
fine.
if we could just change that to be the town warrant.
Please do. Subsection 3 of exhibits referenced in the meeting.
Or just send
Town
me the file
warrant.
and I'll update this
Yep.
part. But that's an amendment I propose to make to this file.
Okay. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Motion to approve the minutes of April 1st
As amended.
as amended.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And any abstentions? We got an abstention. There we go. Very good. Now we get to move on to, as was pointed out a couple minutes ago, sorry it slipped my mind, my math is still accurate. That's it. We are on to liaison reports. I'm going to start at that end of the table this time. How are we doing on the sewers there, Mr. Wellinghoff?
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend the latest meeting where the new chair, I believe the chair, David Martin, was in attendance, so I'm not privy to discuss that one. We did have a train station committee meeting at which the outgoing chair, Mr. David Martin, was in attendance, and the two issues that were just topical, we discussed the feasibility of the parking deck and what may need to be considered as inputs to that, and nothing really came of that at this point, except perhaps there are state or MBTA funds to help fund any said parking deck. So I believe the Board of Selectmen are looking at these issues, and David is now moving front and center on them. The other issue was just the Maple Street property, and we just had a brief discussion on how to determine the parking rates around that and whether to have a different tiered rate for the rail trail and Richards property, the Maple Street property, and then a different rate for the Jones Field lot, which is the one that's a bit further away that requires a bit of walking. And we sort of just did some back of the envelope math to make these, what rates would need to be charged to make these self-sufficient in the budget as it is, to help pay off the bonding of the $1.1 million for the Maple Street purchase price. So nothing really to come of this. This is just a byproduct of the town meeting and moving forward with purchasing that property. And it seems at first blush with 40 parking spots, potentially up to 35 additional, depending on what's decided upon with the property there, that the 40 spots and the rail trail property and the additional lot would be more than adequate to fund the bonding of the Maple Street property purchase. But even depending on how the rates are played with, it could be much less of a financial burden on the other lots. So a little bit more to come. We're just having some discussions ongoing about that. And I think that's really it from my notes. But the bigger issue is really the parking deck, and just that'll be something that's getting more and more discussion as time goes on. But I don't have much to report at this point.
Thank you very much. Mr. Flagenak.
Nothing to report.
Ms. Anderson.
There is nothing that has happened with the...
This is the beauty of April.
Kelly's Corner, Mr. Benson gave us a nice celebration. Apart from that, the committee has not met.
CPC meets Thursday, so
Excellent.
nothing to report.
Excellent.
Just a quick update on Minuteman. I had the opportunity to tour the new building yesterday with the Minuteman School Committee and the Minuteman Building Committee, and it's going to be awesome. I think you will be very impressed. And everything is on budget, on schedule. I did have a brief conversation with the fire commissioner of Belmont, who is building a new high school, just as a footnote. Their school is going to be, Minuteman is about 250,000 square feet, $145 million. Their building, high school, is going 130,000, so it's like half the size. But their budget is already coming in at $300 million, which is before they even put a pen to paper what an architect. It was $30 million over their guesstimate before they even started design. So they're in trouble.
Thank you for being the bearer of such wonderful news.
Nothing to report, and I will be unable to attend the next school committee meeting because my son will be performing in bad auditions by bad actors. And so if anybody is jonesing to go to a school committee meeting, that would be a good one to take.
What day is it?
It is May 9th, 7 p.m.
Any quick takers on that one? May 9, 7 p.m. Okay? If no one else takes it, I will, but hopefully somebody else will take it. Steve?
Health Insurance Trust met last Thursday. The results so far of the year are tracking pretty much to where they thought they'd be.
Which was very positive and very good news, as I recall.
No, we're actually losing money. We're losing exactly the amount of money we thought we would lose, and that's why the rates went down.
There you go. Sana? Unfortunately, I did not make it to the last school building committee meeting. I was out of town for work. I will try and make sure that if I'm going to miss any others, I'll reach out and see if anyone can make it. I see that both of our Board of Selectmen liaisons are not here tonight, but we have a Board of Selectmen who can act as liaison for us. And first of all, did you elect new officers?
That's what I was going to report on. Our new officers, Joan Gardner is our chair, I'm the vice chair, and Dean Charter is our new clerk. Well, thank you. So the select board was, very happy with the outcome of town meeting, particularly.
Select board?
Yes, I like that. Well, it's not official yet. We're not working on that, but I think it's a much better term, particularly when it's 4 men and 1 woman right now, but the woman is the chair. We're very happy with the overwhelming passage of Article 5. That was the Kelly's Corner infrastructure. We thank our outreach co-chair, Sahana, stop it. And Article 12, the transfer of real property at 53 River Street. The disposition of real property, Article 13, that's 364 Main Street. So both those projects are moving along. Article 14, the land acquisition of the Maple Street commuter lot. Article 21, the West Acton sewer study. We're really very excited. There's just a lot of good things that are, going on. And John Mangiarotti has just brought a whole new level of spirit to this building. And there's just a lot of, energy and a lot of, good things that are going on. Again, May 1st, 7:30, there's an ACHC meeting in this room where I anticipate that the powder mill developer will be making a presentation. And then on May 6th, in this room, there'll be the Zoning Board of Appeals hearing on Piper Lane. And so I think that that catches you guys up.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you acting as liaison. Okay. Did I miss anything? I think we're good. Al?
I move to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? 9:04.